Jeremy, how much of the 3.5-hour marathon did you watch of the Clippers vs. Spurs last night?
About an hour and a half of it.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah, I got home and I thought I'd missed most of the game, but lucky for me, it was like 10 minutes left in the third quarter. I love the Western Conference.
Even the shortened version went forever, and a lot of that was because of the Hack-a-DeAndre rule that has come into play. Not the rule, but the Hack-a-Shaq, Hack-a-Hakeem.
Strategy.
Yes.
Thank
you. Stratego. Exactly. So Clippers vs. Spurs Game 5, as the word of the day has come across it many times, the pivotal Game 5.
Pivotal.
I've heard the word pivotal in Game 1s, in Game 3s, Game 5s. I like when they use it in Game 7. No, it's the deciding game. There's no turn to be made besides moving on to the next round. So there's a lot to talk about and digest and discuss with the Clippers vs. Spurs in this game. We're going to start with that before we get to some amazingly interesting ref stat graphics. So, first things first. The one thing that glared out to me in the first half of the game was two things, I should say. Blake Griffin shooting tremendously. And this first half, Blake Griffin has been a major spark into early leads for the Clippers in this series and throughout the regular season. The second half, totally different story. We'll get there. Second quarter, the Hack-a-DeAndre, oh my God. He ended up shooting 45 free throws from the line, and it's impossible to watch sometimes. But let's stick to the first half before we move to the second. What did you see that is Papa genius for the Hack-a-DeAndre strategy in this series, by the way?
I mean, I wouldn't call him a genius. I'd say he's using everything available to him, right, to win a basketball series, right? I mean, I don't think if you asked him, well, first of all, he'd give you a very short answer. But secondly, he would tell you that I don't think he likes it from like a basketball sense to send someone to the line and have everybody subjected. Apparently, Duncan would apologize to him on their way back down the floor. He said, "We're just following orders." That's apparent. That's what one of the announcers
Duncan
said.
seems like a nice human being.
Well, he's probably nicer than most NBA players on the court. Yeah, I mean, like you said, until they change the rule, which I don't know if they should, but I think they're going to. Silver, he mentioned that they might look into that, and it makes sense from a standpoint. But I mean, not only, so if you have someone like DeAndre Jordan who can't shoot free throws, still
made 5, I think.
That's not enough.
Right.
That's the thing. So, okay.
Credit where credit's due.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But I'm saying, so not only are you sending a bad free throw shooter to the line to miss a bunch of free throws, that stadium was silent.
Yeah.
That stadium might as well have been empty.
The travel calls. I don't like blaming the refs for causing a loss in a game. I like blaming refs for causing the flow of the game and inconsistencies throughout. So Blake Griffin's travel, you're going to fucking call that?
See, I disagree with you on this.
I think travels, that's the one that gets called?
And I get that, but at the end of the day, are we just going to stop calling anything that we don't call I get that consistency is important, but if you look at the replay, dude took 2 steps and dribbled. It's a travel. I mean, like, of all the bad calls that you could get on the refs for in this game, that's not one of them. That's actually a good call. It's just an inconsistently good call.
Right. That's a good point to make. It's an inconsistently good call because you know who else traveled in that game?
Chris Paul.
Patty Mills, Chris Paul, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, I'm not done, DeAndre Jordan. Did I say Chris Paul again? Because his stutter step, although a beautiful move and finish, was a fucking travel. Yeah. So at least call consistently throughout a game, but that never happens. And I understand
there's
that,
a thing,
it's
so
frustrating.
they don't call a lot of travels like that on...
No, they never call travels.
Obviously, but my point is, on perimeter players, a lot of the times, because they're good at masking it a little more than, say, big men, right? So, like, if you can carry a ball as a point guard, or maybe take a couple of steps and a drive to the lane when you're a ball handler, right? Not just because you're good at it, because people are used to you doing explosive things like that, and maybe they miss it. But we know, Blake... He's a power forward, right? He has very good handling abilities for someone his size, but when he takes 2 big old gallops and then dribbles, it's easier to notice as a ref, and they're going to call it. Is it fair to call it that inconsistently? No, of course not. But I mean, of all the calls that you can complain about, that was a travel.
Good points. All good points. You rest your case.
I rest my case. You can rest my case if you like.
I'm resting your case, too.
Thank you.
In addition to that, so we'll get to the basket interference calls in a second. The one thing I want to mention first, JJ Redick and Manu Ginobili, God almighty, let the boys play.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's much to go into with that, but like, what, he grazed JJ's hair and his hair is perfectly coiffed over that he can't touch it anymore?
I mean, if you want to talk about all the bad calls that were made in that game, the Redick call for fouling out was definitely up there. I mean, talk about getting mad at the refs for making calls to change the flow of the game. How about having one of your best 3-point shooter foul out of the game for a non-call? If we're going to start getting angry about calls that were made in that game, start with that.
Right. So before we get into anything else with the ref stats, Matt Barnes, wrong basket interference call. Right. DeAndre Jordan, correct basket interference call. Frustrating. You can see the frustration on Doc's face. You can see somewhere behind the 16 layers of no emotions that Popovich shows a smile. was there somewhere.
Somewhere deep in
because
the
he
recesses
knew
of
his
the
strategy
space,
was
yeah.
working throughout this game, regardless which way the refs were swinging it. If that, again, I want to make it very, very clear. I will never blame the refs for any reason a team loses. Because the one point that needs to be made in this clip is the Clippers lost that game because the Clippers lost that game. Does that make any sense? Yes, because when you have your home court in Game 5 coming off an extremely motivational win, an inspirational win that you can beat this team, and you can't sink your free throws, take DeAndre out of the fucking game, run your small team, make your starters play 48 minutes. You don't have the bench to beat the team. So if you're getting beat out by 38 minutes of Tim Duncan, run them faster. If it gets to the Warriors versus Spurs, I think that's one of the ways the Warriors can beat them. Just outrun the team. So ref things moving forward from NBA Stuffer, by the way.
Certainly worth noting.
What a name.
What a name.
A plus name. A plus name. So let's take a look. Boom. So this is just a 2015 NBA playoff referee stats with the main. I left the crew out because it gets a little complicated.
So I believe Scott Foster and Callahan were two of the main officials refereeing last night's game. Okay. So continue with what you were saying.
So what you can see here, I highlighted the home team foul percentage, even though I should have done the road team, because Joe Crawford, here's what stands out to me. And I'll put up a picture of Joe Crawford for you guys to see too, so you know who that is, because you will recognize him. You are supposed to be hovering around the 50%, and if you, to me, give or take 2% either direction. If you're calling 52% on the home, 48% on the away, that's fine. That's close. That is a glaring outlier, and it tells me that you don't know how to do your fucking job. If you're shooting 56.5% to the away team, that means you've missed in a consecutive series, and his numbers aren't that different during the regular season. He was still above that 2.5 plus minus margin on that 50% line. That just tells me that you should not be an NBA referee. Okay. Mike Callahan, on the other hand, I'm sorry, not Mike Callahan. Yeah, Scott Foster, on the other hand, obviously can call a fucking fair game, even though he didn't really do it last night. Mike Callahan, too. Look at the difference. You see the difference.
Was it Mike? Who was the one that teed up Chris Paul when he tossed them the ball?
I believe that was Foster, right? And I also believe Chris Paul mouthed
off to him.
Foster
doesn't give a lot of technicals too, which is worth noting. I think he gives less than one, or he's low down on the list of referees in terms of doling out technicals. So that was a little surprising. Like if it's Joey Crawford and he's teeing people up, it's just another day in the life of Joey Crawford, right?
Another dollar for Joey Crawford.
There you go.
What I find also really interesting was what a beautiful pass to the referee. Perfect textbook chess pass.
Yeah, if anything, they shouldn't have teed him up just because it was so nice.
If anything, ref should have taken a shot. You're being set up.
He was open. Yeah.
Beautiful. He was the most open any Clippers.
Right. Well, I guess I have a couple questions about these stats. So the first thing that I thought of when I looked at these is, what do we do? What do we do about it? What does it mean and what do we do about it?
Hold refs more accountable.
How?
If whoever has the best percentage closest to that 50% line, because if you're trying to get a 50-50, it's not going to happen. There's just too many calls made. Then you should be, taking your crew and putting together over the course of the regular season who called the fairest games. In addition to that, playoff experience is important.
I think what we need more comprehensive and more reliable stats on refs. Because even on the wonderful site that is NBA Stuffer, it says in the bottom, these stats might not be accurate.
Right.
So we probably should get accurate stats first. And but I completely agree.
What's great is what's going to happen is this is the year that the NBA decided, and because the NBA has balls, fantastic league run by a fantastic commissioner, to say that we're going to release the reports on which calls were wrong,
right,
which really holds refs accountable. And really what this leads to also is the main question here. Is it that refs make worse calls in the playoffs, or is it simply amplified because every play matters so much more in a 7-game series?
I think it's a combination of both, but I think far and away the biggest factor is we notice it more, right?
Yeah.
Everybody says that playoff games mean more than regular season games because they do. There's fewer of them, right? So a single play in a single game in the playoff could have much bigger implications than some game on January 13th in the regular season, right? So that's not excusing the missed calls, but it's more sort of how we perceive it than it is, oh my God, the refs are, the fix is in because it's the playoffs now. I think we see the same problems throughout the year, but obviously it's amplified more in the playoffs because the stakes are higher.
Right. And I agree with that 1,000%.
And that's not just with referees, right? So that's just with anything that we see. So for example, Blake Griffin has been chided a little bit for playing very poorly in multiple fourth quarters in this game. That's something he's been doing all year. We don't talk about it unless you're a lifelong Clippers fan, like producer Dan over here, until you get it onto the big stage in the playoffs, right? Where every mistake, every missed call, every turnover, whatever, is so much more important Because everything means more. Every possession
Yeah.
means more. It's just how it works. That's why the playoffs are so exciting.
And again, that's why we love the playoffs. We want more playoffs. And it's funny because we are all our own referees when we sit and we watch these games. Because I can't tell you, every time there's a call, that's not a call. Oh, that's definitely a call. That's definitely a foul. That's not a foul at all. How could that be a technical? And the one thing to let the refs go for is there's heat of the moment. And people forget how hard it is to see all aspects of the floor when you have basically 10, 6'7" and taller giants.
It's certainly not an easy job, but that's why they're paid, right?
That's why they get paid pretty damn well, too.
Yeah.
So, to wrap everything up, two major questions. One, who's winning the series? Because if it wasn't for this, and please, Brooklyn and Atlanta might go 7 games. But
We're talking about bad refereeing. Look at that series.
That's another series.
If only anybody cared.
This is true. But Clippers versus Spurs, obviously carrying the first round of the NBA playoffs so far. Who do you want to see move forward? Do you think that the refs can cause a team to lose a game? Also, do you believe that the refs are worse in the postseason than they are in the regular season? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. Jeremy Rucker, you can follow him on Twitter at JeremyR327. Check me out at JasonRubin91 at TYT Sports. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free.